as 2016 winds down, we know a lot of people, not anybody on this couch, of course.
No.
Eager to start fresh with the new year.
2016, you don't got to go home, but you can't stay here, is kind of what I'm saying. Well, life coach Amber Rochelle is back with some advice on how we can tackle 2017 in a positive way.
And it's very exciting. Thank you for staying with us. We kind of pinned you down last time. So what is the number one piece of advice you can share with us about as we face a new year for holding on?
Yes. So my number one piece of advice would be to focus not so much on what you want to do in the new year, that can come later, but to think about how you want to feel. So connect to your core desired feelings. Do you want to feel empowered? Do you want to feel supported? How really tap into that, and then think about how you want to show up in the world, how you want to be, because everything else will stem from that. The what's and the hows will come from that, but when you can really connect to how you want to show up and how you want to feel, everything else is going to stem from that.
That is one of the first things that has made sense to me
Yes.
when it comes to tackling making goals and resolutions. So when people do talk about making those resolutions, is that the best way to go about what you're describing, or is there a better way?
I think there's a better way. I think that I understand why people make resolutions, but what tends to happen is that they come from a place of perfectionism. And so it's, I'm going to do this 5 days a week, or I'm never going to do this again, right? And then when we mess up, we just beat ourselves up over it, and we're like, oh, well, never mind, I can't do this, I'm not good enough. And a better way to tackle that is, rather than making a really strict resolution, try and make a simple goal. So if you're saying, I want to work out 5 days a week, scale it back to 2 or 3. Start there. And then if you want to work out more than that, great. But make it attainable at first, because then you're going to feel good and you're going to be more likely to stick with it and build from it off of there.
I love that, because then if my goal is 2 days of workout and I work out 3, I'm like, look at me, I am a pro. Versus if I say 5 and I only do 4, and then I'm like,
sad panda.
Exactly. And you want to stay in that place of feeling good, because that's what's going to really keep you motivated, rather than beating yourself up for, oh, I failed.
You talk about self-care in your practice. What exactly does that mean, and why might that be an important way to tackle the year?
Yeah, so self-care is extremely important, and the way that I like to explain it to people is, if you think about your relationship with yourself the same way you would think about your relationship with, say, your partner or your best friend, you have to spend time with that person. You have to nurture that relationship. You have to put thought and energy into it, right? But we don't tend to think about ourselves that way. But when you start to change your thinking and think about your relationship with yourself that way, then you want to spend more time with yourself, and that's how you really tap into what your true feelings are, what your needs really are, what your wants really are, and you get to know that voice of your inner self, and that's going to help you to go into 2017 in a much more aligned and authentic way.
So it's okay for me to go upstairs for 15 minutes and be by myself?
Yes,
okay.
Very much so.
Good. Thank you. Realistic versus hopeful, though. How do we find the balance?
Such a good question. So I love hope. Hope is amazing, and we want to have as much hope as possible. But we don't want to hold such a narrow viewpoint of how we expect things to be, right? Because that's when we get really disappointed. So, for example, if you think of, if you're looking for a man in the new year, right? Rather than saying, oh, I want him to be 6 feet tall and have this kind of job and this kind of car, think about, how do you want this man to make you feel, and focus on that. Because a lot of times things will show up for us, but they won't show up in the timeline that we expect them to, or in the certain way that we expected them to. And that's when we run into that disappointment and frustration. But when you can have a little bit of a looser view of what it is that you want, that sort of allows the universe to bring that stuff to you.
That is fantastic. And that gets back to what you were saying earlier, is making it so that you don't feel like such a failure if the exact perfect thing that you wanted didn't come to you. When we talk about, and we mentioned this a few minutes ago, that not to think of an entire year as a success or a failure, but kind of taking it in increments. What if you're going along in those increments in 2017, and let's say February, March, April, May, that's when something horrible happens. You end up grieving a loss. You end up losing your job, losing your home, something awful. How do you regroup and tackle that? What's the best way to approach that?
Yeah, well, so it's like we were talking about earlier, about really giving yourself the space to grieve, right? And the space to really feel those feelings, and to ask for the support that you need. I think that we have a tendency to try and push things past things really quickly, because we want to be able to move on, but we don't always give ourselves the room and the time to properly grieve things, or to properly feel those feelings. So that's really, really important. And then once you feel like...
A couple of months on this show is really try to focus on kindness and ways that we can find kindness, or add kindness, or celebrate kindness. How important do you think sort of focusing on something like kindness could be in 2017?
I think it's it's extremely important. I mean, kindness is love, right? And that's the main thing. And the more that we can try and be loving towards each other and kind towards each other, but also loving and kind towards ourselves, the better world this is going to be, right? And so I think that that should be at the heart of everything that we do.
Why is that so hard for us to see ourselves as just as an important relationship? Because it's true. It's like, would you talk to a friend the way that you talk to yourself sometimes?
No, right?
I mean, I would never would.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we put different expectations on ourselves than we do to other people. And you have to really question that. And so I love that you said that. Would you talk to your friend that way? Start asking yourself that question. And then why do you think that you don't deserve what it is that your friend deserves? And that's when you can start getting at the root of what's causing you to treat yourself differently. What kind of limiting beliefs are coming up for you? What do you need to heal from your past or move beyond so that you can have a more loving relationship with yourself?
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. I feel more hopeful, genuinely. Thank you. Life Coach Amber Rochelle, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. So a lot more from you on your website. It's amberrochelle.com, and we've got a lot more to come.